All right, we're going to go back a couple slides here, guys, and start with this. This is a close-up of skin, kind of a cross section. And so these are the layers. The stratum corneum is kind of the hardened outer layer of the skin. Lucidum is kind of transparent. Granulosum, spinosum, basal. That's where the cells are actively dividing, and then below that is the part of the skin that actually has circulation and is really more living. As you go from bottom to top, it becomes deader, you might say, kind of dries out, and there's not as much, there's not blood supply to it and so on. That's why if you get a really superficial scratch on your skin, it doesn't really create any pain or discomfort. It doesn't really even require a scab or anything like that. If it gets deep enough where it bleeds, now you're into those lower layers, the dermis. Okay, so subcutaneous means below, hypodermis or subcutaneous. Same thing, subcutaneous, hypodermis, below the dermis, below the skin. Not a part of the skin, but it anchors the skin to the underlying organs, composed mostly of adipose, fatty tissue. So I mentioned to you one day that that's one of the reasons as we age that we have a harder time maintaining our body temperature, because we lose that subcutaneous fat that diminishes to some degree. Okay, layers of the epidermis, basal or germinativum. Sometimes I think germinativum is an easier way to remember what's going on there, because we kind of know with seed plants that the seed germinates or sprouts and is growing new life, and that's what this layer is doing. It's the deepest layer of the epidermis, lies next to the dermis. It's undergoing mitosis. That's an important thing right here, that it's undergoing mitosis. Okay, daughter cells get pushed upward, and so the bottom layers move up, and then the top layers get sloughed off, and we know that. I told you that before, although it might not be that nice to think about. If you get into a tub, and you're not even really that dirty, but if you soak in the tub for a while and get out, the tub water is going to look a little bit murky, and the reason that is that you're sloughing off skin cells. Or the other example I've given you is if you went up to a brightly sunlit window and rubbed your forearm like that, it would look like there's dust coming off your body, but in actual fact, it's dead skin. That's what we all do all the time. We do it constantly. Other organisms that you're aware of, like snakes, they crawl out of their entire skin at once, but for us, we're constantly sloughing off skin cells, and that's why the epidermis is layered or stratified, if you remember from last chapter what that word means. Okay, so all of these are strata. These are all layers. And then stratum spinosum and granulosum, and we kind of skip through those because there's not a lot going on there. The lucidum, that only exists in certain places. That exists on the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet. That thick layer that's only there. Stratum corneum, outer part of the epidermis, shingle-like dead cells are filled with keratin. And we say shingle, we just mean they're kind of flattened and overlapping one another. Think of like roofing material. Okay, and that protective protein prevents water loss. So that's actually something that people don't really think about. But for example, when someone gets a severe burn, one of the major things that's an immediate concern is water loss, dehydration. They're not able to keep their body's moisture in because they don't have that protective barrier. So this layer is critical in that. If I go faster than what you can write, just pause the video. But I want to try to get through a little bit more material, so I'll keep going here. All right, so from deepest to most superficial. So we're going up here. Stratum basal, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, only in those thick, hairless areas of skin, soles of your feet and palms of your hands, and then stratum corneum. The next thing is pigmentation or color in our skin. And the pigment that we're probably most familiar with is, in fact, melanin, made by melanocytes. We don't all have the same, we don't all produce the same amount of melanin. That's obvious. If we look around at ourselves and one another, we can see that not everyone has the same skin tone. So we're not producing the same amount of melanin. So that gives melanin can give skin tones anywhere from yellow to brown to black, depending on the volume of it. And if we're really pale skinned, there's just a lack of melanin. There's not much melanin being produced. The amount of melanin produced depends upon genetics. Of course, we know that, and exposure to sunlight. So something you may or may not have recognized is that no matter how dark your skin is, if it's exposed to sun and you're capable of producing melanin, some people don't produce very much melanin, and so their skin pretty much just burns. It doesn't really tan much, but for anyone that has any significant amount of melanin, ability to produce melanin, it's going to make their skin darker. Doesn't matter how really dark your skin was to start with. If it's exposed to sunlight, it gets darker yet, and it's a protective mechanism. It's meant to protect us against the sun's harmful UV rays. Now we go below that layer of skin to the dermis, and the dermis has two layers. It has something called the papillary layer, dermal papillae, under the dermal region, and those actually are what create your fingerprints. So they kind of push up through. I'm going to go back to this other, see if we can see it on here. Yeah, where this kind of pushes up into here, those are what create your fingerprints. So that papillary layer, dermal papillae, capillary loops, and people's fingerprints are kind of described by whorls and loops. And it used to be there was a lot of just kind of manual identifying of fingerprints, and you'd watch old movies and they'd be looking under a magnifier and comparing. But now, as you know, if you watch the crime shows now, it's all, those comparisons are all made by computer. And in fact, for security reasons, many of us, this computer that I have right here by me, and I'm sure many of you have on your desk, that's how you unlock the computer, is by your fingerprint or your phone. You put your thumbprint up against your phone, and so it's unique to each human being, and it's produced by these dermal papillae. Then the reticular layer, the reticular part of the dermis, has all the really machinery for operation: blood vessels, sweat and oil glands, deep pressure receptors, which mean nerve endings. So that's where we're really getting to the part that's fully alive, you might say. Beyond that, it doesn't have all the vascularity, doesn't have all the nerve endings and all of that. Continuing with the dermis, it has collagen. Collagen fibers are what kind of lock it together, and elastic fibers give it the ability to stretch. Collagen fibers give skin its toughness. Elastic gives it its ability to return to its original shape. So really important, and I think that we probably kind of take for granted how amazing our skin is, its ability to protect us and withstand mechanical damage and chemical damage of some kinds. Obviously there are things, if you have something really sharp, it's going to cut your skin, but it is quite resistant to damage, considering how otherwise soft it is and so on. So these collagen and elastic fibers are some of what allows for that. blood vessels play a role in body temperature regulation. You're probably all aware that when you get really overheated, you might get red-faced, or other people you know might get really red-faced. And that all has to do with shunting the blood to the perimeter of your body so that it can lose heat. It's the equivalent of, if we considered our heart kind of our engine, that's not a great comparison, but let's say that our heart is our engine, and that's where the real action is taking place. We can't lose much heat, or we can't lose it very readily from there because we're so insulated with other tissue around it. But if we move it out to our extremities and to the surface of our skin, now we can lose heat pretty readily. And the analogy with the engine is our car's engine has oil that's in around the engine reducing friction, but it also has water circulating around it. Well, how do we get rid of the water? How do we get rid of the heat that's in that water? Well, we move it out to the radiator, out to the perimeter of the under hood area, so that air can move past it, it can lose heat, and that way it dissipates into the environment, and then that cooler water can go back in and pick up more heat to carry away from the engine. That's what our blood does, and that's why the blood gets moved to the surface of our skin. The opposite can happen if our body temperature is dropping, if we're struggling to survive because of cold. And that's why when you hear people with frostbite, it's usually their extremities, because your body, as a defense mechanism, pulls most of the blood toward the core of your body so that you can conserve heat, just the opposite of when you're overdoing it and trying to get rid of heat. Now you're trying to keep it away from where it'll be lost in the core of your body so you can survive. So, and that also it adds to the coloration of your skin, the reddish hues that people's skin can have. Okay, this is that's a diagram that you're going to have to be really familiar with. Take a look at that. You have it in your book as well, I think, but important that you know those items. Okay, now some other things about skin color. We talked about melanin being the main one, yellow to brown to black. Carotene is in carrots and in other vegetables, and that can give kind of an orangey yellow hue to skin. Probably some of you have seen a baby who's eaten a bunch of like baby food carrots or something, and because of their small body size, short term they might get kind of orange looking skin in their cheeks and so on, or maybe in their hands, and kind of an interesting dynamic. And then hemoglobin gives us the red coloring from blood, and oxygen content determines the extent of red coloring. If we have highly oxygenated, it's going to be brighter red. If we're anemic and we're not carrying enough oxygen, we don't have enough red cells, then one of the symptoms of that is that somebody's very pale. You may have even heard a parent or somebody, an adult, say, that person looks anemic. They look really pale and white, and that can be the case. Even if you're sick, sometimes you might be temporarily anemic, but then there are people who, because they haven't been eating enough iron, or their body's not absorbing enough iron or something like that, are anemic, and it gives them kind of a pale skin color. Here is carotenemia. So this is showing that kind of orangey skin, and you can see it obviously in their extremities, and it looks like a baby's foot and then a hand. That looks like an adult hand, but carotenemia. Okay, skin appendages. The cutaneous glands, skin glands, or exocrine, they don't empty into the blood, they empty right out to where they're going. In this case, sebaceous glands empty oil out onto your skin, and sweat glands empty sweat out onto your skin. The other appendages are hair and hair follicles, so the actual hair shaft itself, and then the part that makes the hair follicle, and then our nails are an extension of our skin. Sebaceous glands, oily glands. Those oil glands are to lubricate your skin, keeps your hair from being brittle. So, oftentimes people try to manipulate that with their body. You don't want your body to be too oily, because it can cause pores to clog and get infected and all of that, and that's obviously bad. But it is carrying out a function. It's meant to keep your skin soft and also your hair from being brittle. Now, survival-wise, wouldn't really matter if our hair was brittle or not. But if we look kind of through the development of living things, for things that require hair or fur to keep them warm, it's important that hair isn't brittle and they don't lose that hair. And it also kills bacteria. So most of the sebaceous glands have ducts that empty into hair follicles. So the hair comes up. Let's go back and look at that picture. So find it. Let's just talk about sebaceous gland. Okay, so here's a sebaceous gland, and here's a hair, and you can see that that gland is affixed to that hair. So what it's saying is that it's emptying, that oil is coming out and then coming out where the hair comes out. And we know that skin that has denser hair follicles also produces more oil. Matter of fact, you know, a lot of the oil that we have on our face actually comes from our scalp, and because we have a lot of hair there, and so we have a lot of sebaceous glands, and then it kind of makes its way down over the surface of our skin. Back to that. Glands are activated at puberty, and that's why, you know, skin problems can kind of be made manifest then at those puberty periods of people's life, and oftentimes it lasts a short time. Some people have more difficulty than others, but it's very natural. That's something that just happens, and so, you know, it shouldn't be something that bothers you too much. You do the best you can to kind of mitigate it, but just know that that'll pass. It's just part of what happens when your body is changing and that oil production increases, and it's hard to keep your skin just at the right level of oil, so that, you know, your skin stays, you know, soft and pliable like it needs to, and yet you don't have so much oil that it's causing problems. So this is showing a sebaceous gland. So this is a cutaway, just like what you guys looked at in the lab of some other histological slides, but this particular one is showing a sebaceous gland that's emptying into a hair follicle. And so here's what we mean. Here's what this is in the diagram, and here's what it would actually look like under a microscope. Okay, sweat glands. We have a couple of different kinds of sweat. We produce sweat to reduce our body temperature, to help maintain our body temperature, widely distributed, but not all sweat glands are the same in all areas of our body. Eccrine, open via duct into the pores of our skin, and apocrine into hair follicles. So eccrine is just kind of the water sweat, and apocrine has kind of proteins and stuff in it, and that's what happens in our armpits where there's hair, and it's a different kind of sweat, and so that's why that kind of sweat actually produces nutrients for bacteria, and so that's what actually creates the odor, like in your armpits or whatever. The other sweat's pretty watery. This has a little more in it. Okay, so this is showing eccrine, these squiggly lines that just empty out onto the skin, and here's what they would look like under a microscope, but these real fine. And this is showing an eccrine gland, and an apocrine gland would be more likely affiliated with a hair, and that would have those proteins in it and so on that can create body odor when they basically are feeding bacteria. So mostly water, salts, and vitamin C, some metabolic waste, fatty acids and protein. That's the apocrine glands. That's in the armpits and genital area. And then the function of sweat is to help dissipate excess heat, get rid of waste, and then the acidic nature of it is supposed to reduce the bacterial growth. But some bacteria, if it's not washed away, it actually provides some nutrient for bacteria. Okay. The hair is produced by a follicle, hard keratinized. So when those skin cells start to dry out, they get harder, and there's a function to that. I mean, it makes them more durable. And then melanocytes. So that's why melanocytes provide pigment for hair. So that's why people with dark skin have dark hair, and people with really light skin usually have light colored hair. There are exceptions of that, but that's the basic scenario. Okay, we'll go just a little bit farther here. Here's the hair follicle, and so you see all these layers of tissue, and the matrix is where the hair is actually growing, and then this is where the vascularization is provided, and then we have these melanocytes, and that's what's adding color to that shaft of the hair, and then the dermal sheath is the very outside part, and then just inside that's the epidermal sheath. So the way to think about that is, guys, this hair follicle, if we looked at our skin and said it's epidermis and then dermis, and then we folded down in like this to where the hair comes out, you still have those same layers. This is the shaft of a hair. Middle part's called the medulla, then the cortex, then the cuticle, or hardened outside part. And each one, the very outside part is the most heavily keratinized. And if you look at a cross-section of hair, I mean, you would think it's just uniform, but it's actually going to, and we might look at that under a live specimen microscope. I think you can see a little bit of that. Okay, associated with the hair structures, hair follicle, dermal and epidermal sheath that surround the hair root. The erector pillae is the muscle that when it shortens, it causes the hair to stand up. And so that's what happens when you're scared or cold. That erector pillae causes the hair to stand up on end. And probably evolutionarily, other animals, as you know, with dogs and things, the hair on their neck will stand up in kind of an attempt to intimidate and look larger and all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's not the case with us, but you know, you've probably heard people use the expression, you know, something made the hair stand up on my neck or whatever, which, you know, from fright or from cold. Sebaceous glands and sweat glands. So oil, and then the sweat glands that are associated with hair follicle are those apocrine sweat glands. So here's what that looks like. Here's the hair shaft, the follicle where it's the growth, the matrix is down here, root, sebaceous glands adding oil, and then this thing, when it shortens, this erector pillae muscle causes this bottom part to come in, and that makes the shaft of the hair stand straight up. So here's a close-up of the skin, and you can see those layers and how it does look very keratinized, and you can see where it refers to it being kind of shingle-like. Excuse me. It laps one over the other, and it looks kind of gross, but that's just the way it is. I mean, that's the way it dries out over time. Okay, we're going to stop with that because then we're going to get into nails. We'll stop with that.